there's been average about 10 new communities that were built over the last decade. So if you go over the last decade, there's 92 communities that were built.
Manufactured housing is a solution or a partial solution. It's affordable housing.
We've had this experience. Homes that we were bringing into our communities with suggested retail price at $63,000 when we ordered them. By the time they got delivered, the MSRP went up to $75,000. And we have a very special MHP Exchange Podcast today. I'm your host, Frank Rizzo. Joining me is my partner, Eric Busuttil. Today, Eric, we're going to talk about, because this is year end and we're going into 2024, we're going to talk about the top 5 predictions that we have for the mobile home.
Well, top 10 predictions.
Well, I'm not telling 10. I'm only telling 5.
But it's a total of 10.
Well, it depends if we have the same ones. Top 5 predictions that we have for the mobile home park industry in 2024. And, you know, I'll let you start it off, E. This is people wondering, there's a lot of things that's happened in the industry over the last 12 months. What do you see happening in 2024? What's your top prediction? Or your number 5 prediction, however we work it. Number 5.
Well, this is my number 1 prediction.
Okay.
Affordable and workforce housing, there's going to be a continued growing demand. There has been a growing demand for quite some time now. I think now more than ever, there's going to be a demand that continues to grow. And I think, manufactured housing is a solution or a partial solution. It's affordable housing. And I think that, there's going to be continued eyes on the space. People are, I've looked at manufactured house for myself for a summer home. Over the last couple of years, the prices of homes have just kind of gone through the roof to a point where, it's become unaffordable in a lot of places.
So I absolutely agree with you on that one. And that is my number 5 prediction. I think for an operator over the next 12 months, this is going to be a great time. I do not believe that inflation has been tamed. I think it's something that people are feeling at the supermarket. People are feeling when they're paying their bills at the end of each month, whether it's a car payment, whether it's a credit card payment, it's there, it's real, and affordability is an issue. So for operators over the next 12 months, the fundamentals may never have been better for a true operator in the space.
And just to put a visual for individuals who aren't so familiar with the space, you could find a very nice home, for a price point of, $50,000 to $60,000, right? So when you talk about affordable and you've been renting for so many years, or you've been looking for that, place to retire, a $50,000 to $60,000 brand new home it doesn't get any more affordable than that.
Number 2 or number 4, depending on which way you look at it, E. What would you say your next prediction is?
My number 2 prediction is that in the manufactured housing space, technology is going to start to become, there's just going to be a growing demand for technology in the space. And I noticed that firsthand from getting into the space 8 or 9 years ago, trying to get homeowners or residents to, work with smartphones or do anything outside of giving you cash. It was extremely difficult in the beginning. And and we've worked with our residents to try to transition them into, paying by credit card over the phone. And that was like a big obstacle. And I think, and COVID was a big factor in this, right? People, weren't, communicating directly hand to hand anymore. And it just became more common. So I think you're going to see a lot of people in this space become more familiar using smartphones and other technology.
And to be more efficient.
Correct.
I think that's big. My next prediction, and I think it almost ties in with the first one, was I think on the home sale side over the last few years, there was a tremendous growth in manufactured home demand, and it couldn't keep up with the inventory, and the price points there changed. So we saw, and we've had this experience, homes that we were bringing into our communities with a suggested retail price at $63,000 when we ordered them. By the time they got delivered, the MSRP went up to $75,000. Now, we stuck to our original price point because we were looking at infilling the community. Some people didn't. And I think you're going to see an uptick in foreclosures in homes, in manufactured homes, because of some of the affordability issues that we talked about before. And that uptick means that I think on the new home sales, you might see some compression in pricing. We're already seeing demand down 25% nationwide, but I do think the resale market is going to open up a bit, and you might find some additional value there. So I do see an uptick in foreclosures and distress sales in the resale manufactured home market, especially off of newer models. So you might find some real value and some real bargains over the next 12 months.
I agree, Frank. Another topic I think is going to be a top topic is that you're going to continue to see emerging markets in these secondary and tertiary areas for affordable housing, developments to either be, expanded on existing ones or new ones develop, over the last, 4 or 5 years. And again, I'm talking firsthand in my travels, you've seen a lot of these cities have new manufacturing facilities come to these areas. A lot of big companies have left big cities and gone into these areas. You're going to see continued growth in these areas and a need for affordable and workforce housing. And you're going to see it happen or continue to happen in these secondary and tertiary markets outside of big city markets.
So that kind of ties in with one of the predictions I have, where I think for the first time in many years, where we've only saw, nationwide, there's been average about 10 new communities that were built over the last decade. So if you go over the last decade, there's 92 communities that were built. I think going forward, you're going to see that number expand. And we've already spoke to a number of operators in, predominantly from the Northeast, who have gone down to the Sun Belt, to the Midwest, and they've started to expand and open up their own communities, which hasn't been done in mass before. And I think you're going to see a number of those communities come online in the next 12 months. So I think you're going to see a surge in new developments for manufactured housing communities, which I think it's a good solution to the affordability housing issue that we have nationwide. So I think that's a positive development for 2024. Your next prediction, whether it's number 4, number 2, what do you want to call it, E?
My next prediction is you're going to see a lot of operators that entered the space in the last 4 or 5 years probably exit the space. And, when we first got into this space, this was the most, uninstitutionalized asset class in real estate out there, pretty much, right? And it's become more institutionalized over the last handful of years. And you've seen a lot of, smaller operators also enter this space. And one of the key components which allowed people to be successful that didn't understand the space was the fact that interest rates were extremely cheap, right? And because of that, they were able to operate, at a profit. And this is a space like no other. And we say this all the time, that this is an operator's space. And there's a lot of different things that go on inside of this area. And, and again, and I keep saying this firsthand, we're witnessing and we're seeing, people that have entered this space or groups that have entered this space look to exit.
I agree on that, E. And I think one of the things that people, misjudge going in is that there's a number of different verticals inside that community that if you don't have a handle on, that community could run away from you real quick. You not only own the land, but if you have the homes, you've got to have have that management piece. You can't rely on outsourced management in this space, or you can't effectively scale on outsourced management. You have to have that your hands on the lever, so to speak. You have to understand the new home market if you've got an infill community, right? You have to make sure that you've got an understanding of what those homes and that home value is. There's different verticals that are in this space that don't exist in multifamily housing, in commercial, in retail. And if you don't have your hand on it or a handle of it, it could get away from you. And I think you're correct. I think you are going to see some people who entered the space over the last few years, especially if things get tough in other spots or they're not making the money they thought they were, they might be looking for a quick exit on that. I think something that you need to be paying attention to, and we started to see some of it in the last couple of years happen, and I think it's picking up a little steam. I think you've got to look at regulatory issues, whether they're rent control or tenant right of first refusal. So if you're entering a new market, you need to understand the dynamics of that. Some of this is driven by ideology in some of these state houses, and some of it, with the industry has to say we have a little bit of you could carry a little bit of a black eye on it. There's a lot of stories of operators who've come into spaces, have done no improvement to the community, and all of a sudden, doubled lot rent right off the bat. And that kind of gives the industry a little bit of a black eye. We have to be honest about that. When somebody comes in there and they take a lot rent from $200 to $500 a month with no improvements, even if it's undervalued, that existing resident is experiencing payment shock. And if that existing resident has that shock to the system, they're going to start making complaints. And then it's going to force people to make an action. So I think we've got to be aware of that. I think before you invest in a community, you have to know what the landscape is and make sure you know what the regulatory, temperature is before you make that commitment or make that investment. And I think that's something that we have to watch and pay attention to. And it's one of the reasons why you need to get involved in some of the local associations, whether it's the local Manufactured Housing Association or MHI. I think that's super important to be part of that, because that'll keep you plugged in as to what's going on there on the ground. In your top prediction for 2024?
I think that my top prediction for 2024 is that you are going to see a lot of inventory become available, right? The last, when we first started, going after properties, I don't want to say there was an abundance of properties to choose from or take a crack at, but in the last 24 months, it's become, difficult to get your hands on a good property, and there's just less inventory like most real estate markets. I think in this market, you're starting to see properties, you're starting to see more and more properties hit the market for a multitude of reasons, right? The individual that bought a property with financing a handful of years ago, that is now their first initial term is expiring, right? Their interest rate's going to double, sometimes triple if it goes into that adjustable period. So they're either going to have to refinance at a higher number, or they're gonna look to sell. And I think that's a key factor here.
You're correct on that. That was my top issue, I think, or my top prediction for 2024. There's going to be more inventory available, and I think it's twofold. One, interest rates reset. You have $1.4 trillion of commercial real estate loans that have to be reset over the next 24 months. When they do get reset, those rates are going to be different, and operators are going to have to make choices. Either I'm going to put cash in if it hasn't been performing the way I expected to, or off of my initial underwriting. Maybe I have to make a quick exit. I think there's going to be less competition for those great assets. When we first got involved, 9 years ago, we were competing against 2 or 3 other buyers, maybe in certain markets. There was very little competition. Over the last, 3-4 years ago, there might have been 20, buyers, 25 buyers. I think that number has dwindled down. I think part of because some of these operators have decided to leave the space, so that number is dwindle down, and you're going to have that inventory of people who got in that maybe I have to get out. And I also think you're going to have owners, legacy owners who have built-in equity, right? They've owned the property for a long time. They realize prices have started to come down. And if there's an opportunity where where they can lock in that equity gain and maybe move on or exchange into something else or move on to the next stage of where they want to be, this will be the best time for them to do it. Because if they don't do it now and the prices further contract, then they've got to extend the life cycle of where they want to hold that asset. So I think you're going to see more inventory hit the market in 2024. There'll be less competition. So if you're out there looking for, good opportunities or good assets to buy in secondary or tertiary markets, this will be a great time to do that. I think it's going to be an operator's market. I think you got to watch your price points. And I think 2024 is going to be there's going to be more activity in the space. So I think it's something that you got to be able to watch. I'm glad that we're going to be able to do it, and we're going to bring it to you on the MHP Exchange and let you know what's going on down on the ground. So thank you very much. We wish you all a happy and successful 2024. We'd love to see you invest in 2024 in a mobile home park. And if you have questions, give us a call. You could reach out to us on the MHPExchange.com. Send us an email. We'd love to find out your questions. If you have a question about a park that you own and how you can maximize that value, get in touch with us. Or if you have a question of how you can get involved in the MHP space, still the most undiscovered gem in the real estate market, then reach out to us on the MHPExchange.com. I'm Frank Rizzo. We'll talk to you soon.